Gemma, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for
Cheers,
having me.
Gemma. Really appreciate it. Lovely to have you
Another
here.
Jawbox session.
Yes,
Jerry,
indeed.
I feel like it's been a while.
It has been a while.
I have missed
too
you.
long, far
Daniel
too long.
keeps asking for you. He really does.
Well, you keep going off and making babies, so we'll have to sort of.
Yeah, it's really holding back the Jawbox session
Yes.
empire, isn't it?
You'll have to sort of
Take it
hold
up with
yourself
HR.
back.
How do you know Gemma, and why did you want to have this conversation today?
Gemma, I know basically, well, partly through your television fame, but also Peculiar Tea, of course, because I'm across the road and I've been twice, I think, and then two friends of mine have been on, I think, every single one of your theme nights.
Very
'Cause
good.
they're crazy
Brilliant.
about them. And they're brilliant. They're brilliant. And I love the way that you put it, that it's taking people out of reality. Mm-hmm. And it's your own wee wonder world, really, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's fantastic, because there isn't anywhere that's doing anything like that.
Yeah.
So it's brilliant. And for somebody who started off wanting to be a nurse,
Correct. Yeah.
you know, and then unfortunately you had a back injury.
That's right.
Is that what happened there?
Yeah, so I left school and went to Queen's and done nursing straight after my A-levels. And while I was doing my placements and one thing or another, I started realising that I was getting a lot of pain in my back.
Right.
Because obviously I was lifting people and one thing or another. And eventually ended up having to get MRI scans and stuff done. And it turns out that I have like an issue with my spine being shaped the right way. And it didn't really show until I was as active as I was when I was doing nursing.
Right.
And had to get quite a lot of treatment done, and then eventually failed my medical. So found myself not doing nursing anymore, which I was gutted about, because that was always the goal. That was the dream, was I wanted to help people, and I wanted to be a nurse. Wasn't smart enough to be a doctor, but didn't have the A-level results for that one. But
No one in this
no.
room does, so you're all good. I mean, sorry,
Yeah.
Jerry, I don't want to speak out of turn unless you're holding back on something
Well, I
here.
don't like that. But
I never got any lower than an A-star in my life.
yeah, so that was the end of the nursing career before it even really took off.
and then Tesco for a while.
Then Tesco, yeah. So I went to this sort of a school. I went to Assumption Grammar in Ballynahinch, and I sort of took that school as, you know, you're either a doctor or a lawyer, or you had to go to uni. It was out of the question to do anything else. So after I'd done treatment and I was sort of back on my feet again, I tried to go back, and I'd done a foundation degree in biomedical science.
Right.
So I thought, this is it. You know, I need to use these A-levels. I worked hard in school, so this is what I'm going to do. And I just hated it. Found that I was only really going back because I thought that was something I needed to do.
Yep.
But all the time I was just working in Tesco, working on a checkout, wasn't doing anything. And then the next couple of years were just sort of trying to get back to life a wee bit, to be quite honest. Had a really bad spell with my mental health, because obviously I was at that stage where all my friends were now graduating and moving on to greater things, and I was still working in Tesco, and you know I didn't feel like I was progressing anywhere, and I just couldn't deal with it at all, and got to the point where I wasn't able to leave the house really.
Wow.
So that then took me down a completely separate road of the sort of journey of getting back to me, I suppose.
Right.
Got a lot of treatment done, went to cognitive behavioural therapy for a year, done all that sort of stuff. Came out the other end of that and started going around like community centres in Belfast and stuff and explaining what anxiety was and depression was and stuff. So off the back of that, I sort of thought the lack of knowledge of mental health was the issue. So if I could teach people what it was, it might help, you know. So we done free sessions, positivity workshops, stuff like that. Basically, I started my own charity and we started doing that. And then I was, again, still needed to use these A-levels because in my mind it was like, sort of, what am I going to do? The charity obviously was just something I was doing for free with my own time. So again, working in Tesco the whole time, and then went back to Ulster. So I went to Ulster University in Belfast and done a degree in culinary arts management. So the culinary arts degree is 4 years. So done that and only graduated in 2019 actually. So I'm only out of uni 4 years.
Right, yeah.
Graduated there with a first class honours. So it was
So you've been like studying and working full time though. So
Oh yeah, I've always I'm you could probably call me a workaholic. To be
Yeah.
fair, I've had a job since I was 13 and I've never been unemployed since then.
What was the job?
I was a bar waitress at Le Mans Hotel
right.
Class.
at 13, and then I stayed there till I was 16. So yeah, I've always been studying and then working. Obviously, working an awful lot when I was studying the culinary arts degree, because at that stage I'd moved to the old inn in Crawfordsburn and I was doing sort of 45, 50 hour week there on top of a full-time degree. So didn't take a day off for 4 years.
Yeah.
But it was worth it because obviously look
Oh,
the
yeah.
success now, you know.
Your,
So
your mother was a chef, wasn't she?
she was pre-children. That was mum. That's what she wanted to do. She worked we're from Cardiff, so she worked in the Ivanhoe and a couple of places around there. And yeah, she loves cooking. She actually works. She's a chef in my kitchen now. So, which is brilliant.
Oh, brilliant. So you work with your mother, right?
I work
Yeah.
with all of them. So
Yeah.
my both my sisters are in the kitchen with me as well, which is fantastic. So it's a family affair. So yeah, they're a massive part of what we're doing now too.
Brilliant. No, I read somewhere that when you first sort of get into the whole food industry and restaurants, you went out for lunch with your mum.
Yeah, yeah,
And you were looking at a job at this time,
yeah,
and she says, well, why don't you ask the chef there?
yeah. So I was
And he came out and says, yes.
Slim's Kitchen had
And he
just
came out and
opened.
says, do you have any weights? And you went, what are they?
Yeah, that's exactly how it
Brilliant. I thought
happened.
that was lovely.
Yeah,
so
so
that was
we
like
were
your first.
Yeah, we were on the Lisburn Road. Slim's Kitchen had only been open a couple of months, and I went in for lunch with my mum, and I just had a complete meltdown, and I was like, I still don't know what I want to do, and I was just, I was always like eager, even when I worked in Tesco, I always worked loads of hours. Like I was always eager I always had a really good work ethic, and I was like, you know, I need to do something that matters to me, and my mum just happened. I had my back to the pass, and my mum just pointed to the chef, and she was like, "Why don't you do that?" And I was like, "What?" Like, you know, I'd made a couple of cakes and stuff before, but I'd never ever had never thought about food. You know, I was a pot noodle and a bit of white bread kind of girl like beforehand, and you know, and I went up, and Aidan was the head chef then, and I says, "Can you give me a job?" And he just says, "Well, do you have any whites?" And I says, "I don't know what they are." And he says, "Like jackets?" And I says, "No." And he says, "Right, can you get some?" I said, "Where do you go?" He said, "The chef shop in Belfast." And that was it. The next week I started, and it was just like this. I found
Crazy.
it. This is
It
it.
was I mean, to get that opportunity, even though it wasn't maybe what you had forefront in your mind, for somebody to give you that opportunity.
Oh, yeah.
And then you to get the buzz and.
So that was your gateway as such? Into
That was it. That was it. And
Literally,
obviously-
like a panicked conversation.
A panic.
And your mom's like, oh, sure, just ask that guy.
Exactly. And then I went in and I was kind of like, I don't know if I have any interest in doing this. And as soon as I remember the first chef showing me how to sharpen a knife, and he was like, "You just sharpen," and I was like, "This is it. I want to work with knives." Yeah, you know. I found my calling. But no, that was, and then obviously Ryan Jenkins, who you've had on before, was there. So he was there at the start of the journey too. So yeah, it's been mad.
I've got a few follow-ups. So the work ethic, where does that come from?
Probably family. You know, my mum and dad. I've always had a really good work ethic. My dad, you know, he started his own business when I was very, very young. We grew up when I was growing up very young. We didn't have a lot, and then his work ethic made him a very successful business. So on reflection of that, you know, I always seen it was always my dad at work, and then my mum at work, my dad, you know, so probably from them.
Crazy. And then you experienced something at a very young age that I feel like to have, to put it bluntly, to have everything that you were working towards be taken away from you. Mm-hmm. That's a really tough thing.
Yeah.
And you had to basically reinvent yourself at the age, as you say, whenever everyone's starting their graduate jobs and probably buying houses and getting married and blah, 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 blah. In that journey there, like, what did you find out about yourself, or what kind of rose up from the ashes that kind of using?
Yeah, I suppose there was. I suppose there was really two ways. You know, I've always said that I've always found myself to be a very positive person. So even when my mental health was low, I always had a positive outlook. So I was like, you know, I'm not good now, but I can get better. And don't get me wrong, there was plenty of times where I thought that wasn't the case. And that's usually why I would bring this up whenever I'm in things where people are listening, because people don't people look at the Great British Menu and the restaurant and the success, and they think, well, she has everything. And the reality is, there's still days now where I can't get out of bed, you know, and that's, but people don't see that, you know, and I think it's important to sometimes to bring that into conversation because it should be normal, you know. So,
and like anxiety, depression, is there one that would be stronger for you than the other, or is it a mix?
I would definitely be more anxious than depressed.
Yeah.
But you get moments of both.
Sure.
You know, usually they come hand in hand. Now, don't get me wrong, 99% of the time I'm great.
Yeah.
But you get that 1% day
And
where you just think, just hit you out of nowhere. And I found that actually after I had just opened the restaurant, I actually put a video on our Instagram page of it. I think it was only 2 or 3 weeks after we opened the restaurant. And I remember walking in to the restaurant just being like, I don't want to be here. And I remember doing a video and just being like, I feel so low, but this is the dream, you know. And people always say like, oh, well, maybe you feel like this because you don't have such and such, or you don't have. And I was sitting in there in my restaurant in the city centre of Belfast 9 years after I started cooking. Not even at that stage, it was 8 years after starting cooking with what people would kill for, and I was. It didn't make any difference, you know. So I think when I put that video on, we got like something like 15,000 shares because people were just like, yeah, this is the truth. You can have everything, and doesn't mean that you're going to be all right. And don't get me wrong, we all have up and down days, but I think it's just nice to have the conversation. That's why we do so much for that sort of stuff in the restaurant. You know, we done a mental health theme. We work in conjunction with the suicide awareness group in West Belfast. You know, we work and my staff are very much of the understanding that it's very much an open conversation.
Yeah.
I think it's something I've only started to really understand in recent years. And like, so I'm a suicide survivor, so I've been through the depression and the mental health journey in my teens, and I'm 28 now, so kind of you look at things differently and you read things and you learn things. And someone put it to me recently where they said, it is a respective circumstance, or it can be a respective circumstance, because that's what depression or anxiety is. If you're sad and you have a good reason to be sad, that's called being human.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
if you lose somebody, or if really something that you've been working towards hasn't gone your way, and you feel sad about that, you're not depressed, you're sad.
Yeah.
And you should be sad. If you weren't sad, you'd be
Absolutely.
worrying. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And same with anxiety, you know, are there times where you should be on high alert? Oh, you absolutely should be. Yeah. If you're being chased by a tiger, you better feel anxious.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
It's whenever the sadness and that anxious feeling is way overplayed, or not connected, and that's actually where it can come into the realm of a mental health problem.
Yeah, of course. Like anxiety is obviously something that it is built into us. We need it, or we'd be in trouble. You know, anxiety is the thing that tells you no whenever you're in danger. The problem is when you're anxious. But for me, it's more like a panic and being anxious about things that make no sense to be anxious about.
Yes.
You know, and whenever it becomes part of your every decision that you make, then you know that you're taking a step away from, oh, I'm anxious because I'm about to go on national television, and I'm anxious because I don't want to walk into the shop and have people look at me. You know, so I think there's, you know, there is the balance. But I think you're right. I think nowadays we hear anxiety and depression and it's thrown around so much. And I think that sometimes that in itself can be quite dangerous, because I think people that, like you said, having anxiety for a particular reason, it's not anxiety, that's a natural response. You know, you're about to do your exams. You don't have an anxiety disorder. You're nervous because you're doing exams. Like that's a human thing to feel, you know. Like I said, I think it's obviously whenever it's part of your day-to-day and every decision that you make is based around how easy it will make your anxiety or how hard it will make it, you know, that's whenever you see that difference.
Yeah, and those natural feelings, a lot of them are to encourage us to take action in a certain direction to get us out of those situations.
Yeah, of course.
But when you move into the realm of, you know, mental health problems, then that kind of very powerful force is being turned against you, and then so you're not leaving the house.
Yeah.
You're not going to work. So it's actually stopping you from taking the action that maybe even would make a difference. So it's interesting. With the name A Peculiar Tea, where did that come from?
So I came up with the concept of a peculiar tea while I was in uni. So the degree that I done was it was a business degree. So our dissertation at the end of final year we had to do either a research paper or a business plan. So I done a peculiar tea as my business plan. And then,
wow.
so I actually got that from doing the degree, obviously alongside the lectures and stuff giving me a hand. And then at the end of your final year, you have to basically go in front of Invest NI, say this is the ideas that I've had, and they grade you on it. And I got the highest grade of the year. So
Brilliant.
I was kind of could be onto something here. But I wasn't 100% sure that the concept would work. So I started it as a pop-up. So I started doing pop-ups in Belfast. I had one in Output Espresso, obviously, that Gary owns. Done a couple in Bangor and, that sort of direction. And I was selling 50 tickets in 2 minutes. And I was like, there might be something here. This is...
Yeah, if you're like doing Taylor Swift speed ticket numbers, you're on to the winner.
Beyonce who? No, 100%. And I was like, God, something that this could be something. And then when I done Great British Menu the first time, I didn't have my own restaurant. And then when they asked me to come back, I knew, I was like, if I'm going to do it this time, the publicity has to be for me. So that was...
Interesting.
It was sort of... And it was the end, just the tail end of COVID. So we opened in December 21. It was still masks and all that sort of stuff. And everybody was saying, it's just absurd to open a restaurant. Like this, not the time to do it.
During the most difficult
time. Absolutely. And I thought, it really is, it's now or never. So, and that was it. I just thought, right, let's do this.
And the funny thing was, to Great British Menu, got in touch with you through Instagram.
Yeah,
which they don't normally do.
No.
Because of COVID.
Because of COVID,
there was no other way of getting
So I got a message from one of the producers on Great British Menu.
And that was because they had seen your
the pop-ups. Yeah, so they had seen the pop-ups and obviously it was all documented, so they were sort of following what we were doing. And then the producer messaged me on Instagram, and obviously you get an Instagram from someone you don't know. And when I clicked on her profile, she only had something like 450 likes, and I was like, yeah, of course, yeah. So she was, I'm the producer on Great British Menu. I'd love to have you on. Blah blah blah. Would you like to talk about it? So I just didn't even reply.
Yeah, you're like, my dad's also a Nigerian prince.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I was just like, yeah, whatever. And then she got back to me again, and I was like, kind of reluctant, but I gave her my phone number, and we were on the phone for about an hour and a half. And I was like, right, I suppose we're going to do this then.
Mad. Was there anything about the pandemic? This is a weird question to ask. Is there anything about the pandemic that almost gave you a unique opportunity that you wouldn't have had otherwise?
Possibly. I think that I didn't take... So I worked in Hollywood during the pandemic, and I didn't take any time off. So I worked the whole way through it. So for me, I feel like a lot didn't change. Mm-hmm. But in a lot of ways, I think I maybe have a very different outlook from a lot of people in hospitality when it comes to the pandemic, in the sense that I think it done a lot of good for a lot of people, in the sense that it was a new beginning. And now, don't get me wrong, obviously financially and everything, it was horrendous for the restaurants that were open. I know, because I was managing one. But it was a new hospitality when we came back. Everybody had new fire in the belly. Everybody had been thinking about what they were going to do while they were sitting at home for 2 years, raring to go. So as soon as the restaurants reopened, I feel like Belfast had such a huge spike in incredible dining, which I think is only part and parcel with the pandemic. Mm-hmm. A lot of people obviously are also struggling to get chefs at the minute, and that is an issue. But again, and I don't want this to sound in the wrong way, but I think a lot of people that weren't right for the industry left because they find that obviously they can get Amazon delivery driving job for the same money as what you would get for chefing, but they're getting home in the evenings to see their families. So I feel like the people that stayed are the ones that are really committed to hospitality. Yeah. And in that sense, I feel like it's sometimes a nicer hospitality to be in. And also just, it has changed hospitality in the sense that it's a nicer place to work now. You can't get away with the things that even when I was starting out, the way I was being treated, because that's just the way the kitchens were now. It's not like that now, which is nice.
There's definitely more consideration given to life balance.
Oh, big time, yeah.
Working at, now, the only thing that I'd noticed, because people were so pent up and bussing to it again, customers took a wee while to know how to treat people who worked in service and hospitality. Yeah. And some of the things that I overheard, I went, my God, that is unbelievable.
Yeah.
Thankfully, that's all calmed down.
They were coming back rude.
Unbelievably
Really?
rude.
I almost would have thought they would have come back all mousy.
Now,
Excited to see
people
people.
were, but there was just
Interesting. They lost all their
some of
social
them
skills.
were, yeah.
Well, I mean, 2 years will do that. for
Yeah, well,
anybody.
that's it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And then during or just after COVID, which I thought was brilliant, you opened the restaurant on Tuesdays for people who might have had meta or who weren't mixing with people or seeing
Yeah,
their friends.
yeah.
You had basically an open door.
Yeah.
Come in, have a cup of coffee and a chat.
Yeah.
And I thought that was amazing. I thought that
Yeah,
was
well, I
brilliant.
suppose like it's always for me the part and parcel of the restaurant is that it always comes hand in hand with what I've been through in the
Yeah.
sense that I don't hide behind it. You know, it's many years ago or a few years ago. Yes, I definitely wouldn't have the confidence to come out and speak about it like this.
Yeah.
But I think that I'm a firm believer in everything happens for a reason. And I think that the reason that the way I like to think about it is I went through what I did so that I'm here to tell this to people
Yeah,
that maybe feel
absolutely.
like they don't. And that's what the Tuesdays were for. I was just me. I just opened the door.
Yep.
And people were free to walk in and just sort of say, this is how I'm feeling. This is what I'm going through. And I, from the very beginning, always say, I am not a psychiatrist. I have no training. But sometimes you just need to know there's somebody there to listen.
Exactly.
And people, I find that whenever I speak to people, they take a lot from my story because I can say, like, you know, I seen no way out at one stage. And now look, so that is so possible, you know, and I think people like to hear that, you know, so, but the Tuesdays were good, they were good.
Yeah. And then even at one point, when things were maybe really rough, you opened up and you were giving Sunday dinners to people who...
Yeah, so we
That's-
we actually done it through October through to December. So obviously that's when the real height of the cost of living crisis was really crippling people. And coming up to Christmas, obviously that's when the bills had really skyrocketed and the gas and all was up and people were struggling. So we opened the restaurants on Sundays for free. So we done free 3-course meals for people that we thought that they needed them. And yeah, it was brilliant. My mum and dad were a huge part of doing that, and my aunties and stuff.
Mum and Dad was never out of the place.
Yeah, every Sunday.
They're
Yeah,
always
2
there.
sirloins. Yeah. No, but they worked it, and my
Brilliant.
aunties and my uncles worked it, and you know, and it was all volunteer based, and we just put on a spread every Sunday.
And it wasn't abused or anything, like sure it
No,
wasn't.
definitely. Like
Which I thought was also
That's-
wonderful and
yeah.
for people's part they went, this is a wonderful offering. And
Yeah.
we're not going to rip the backside out of it. you
yeah,
know?
absolutely, and it's it's great to see. You know, we did have a lot of people get in touch and sort of say, you know, well, this is pointless because you're going to have people that don't need it, but on their conscience be it. That's I'm not going to demand to see how much people make or you know, if people feel like they need it, then they need it, and we had some incredible people come through the door. Actually, I had a lady come into the restaurant a few weeks ago. And she asked to speak to me, and when I went out and seen her, I says I didn't recognise her, and she says, you don't know me, but I came to one of your free Sunday lunches, and I says, oh, that's amazing, and she says, I got you a gift, and I was like, right, okay, and it was a Bible that it was like this like really beautiful Bible, and she was like, and she says, when we came here, my son had been a heroin addict for 38 years, and I'd never seen him. And whenever he came home, we came here for free lunch because we couldn't afford it.
Wow.
And that was basically their first, they're reunited for the first time, was because they could come to our restaurant. And it's just things like that.
Amazing, 'cause
You
you
know,
don't know
it's
what
just.
somebody's backstory
Oh,
is
absolutely.
and what
we-
can follow on
it was,
through that.
and do you know what? See that, like, I just think, and I know I'm biased, but I just think the people in Northern Ireland are incredible. I really do. And I don't
agree
think,
with you. I agree.
don't get me wrong, I know that it has its troubles and Catholic, Protestant, border, all that sort. But when it matters, none of that's, like, when it comes down to it, nobody gives a shit. Oh, sorry, am I allowed to say that?
Yeah.
But okay, but really, when it matters, people don't care about that stuff because they like we ask. I always said that we would do that from our own money. Now every restaurant's struggling, but we would always find a way.
Yeah.
You know, so don't need any money. Thank you very much. You know, and people are just coming in and throwing like £100 at the staff, being like, use that for Sunday. And
Nice.
so many people messaged and sort of said, you know, can you please set up a GoFundMe page? And I was like, listen, I don't really want to do that. I don't like taking people's money. And eventually we gave in and we opened it. And within like something like 3 days with like £3,000.
Nice.
And I wasn't even asking people. They were just like, people coming in with £5 notes and saying like, this is all I have, but take it. And I was just like, this is what it's all about. You know, this
Yeah,
is.
it is.
And because we got all that money, we were then able to do food parcels for people that were coming. You know, there was families. I think the first Sunday we had 80 people booked in, and 40 of them were children.
That's
And like
mad.
some of the children, that was their first proper meal that week. You know, I remember a specific table that we brought out this huge bowl of mashed potatoes, and the kids were like, "Whoa, like look at all this food. What do we do with all this?" And I was just like, "Oh my God, this isn't."
That's really amazing.
But that was only because the people of Northern Ireland were like, let's give back, you know. And like I said, I never asked for anything, and they just constantly wanted to give and give and give. And I was just, it really is just, it speaks volumes.
It does. And I think because whenever there's things like Children in Need or any of these big charity events, I think it always comes out that we're the most generous of anywhere. You know, Scotland, England, Wales, we here are always proved to be the most generous.
100%.
Give the biggest amount.
Yeah, and it's the same as...
So it's lovely to hear.
Yeah, it's the same as even like Great British Menu. Like when you go on Great British Menu, even if you've tanked and you've done it really, like you haven't had a good dish, the people here are just like, whoa, we love you, like we're rooting for you, this is great, you know, and it's just amazing. And it really is, we're a credit sometimes whenever it comes to things like that.
And then going back to the Great British Menu, and I found this really, really interesting, is that you said it was actually more difficult going back the second time.
Definitely.
Where I would have thought, you know, well, I've done it the first time. I know there's going to be cameras everywhere, and I know. But I read somewhere that you had said it was actually much, much more.
Yeah.
Because you put yourself under more pressure.
Definitely.
Is it because you think there's more going to be expected of you?
Yeah, expectations definitely higher.
You've been here before. And
absolutely. And because the first time I went on it, I got through to the final. I sort of thought, well, if I go back on this, I can't go any less. So I have to go to the Friday again. I have to go to the final. And if I don't, I haven't succeeded the way I did last time, and people will expect that. And then when I done it the third time, I was like, this is it. It's now or never. But I had always said I would give it 3 goes. That was, I spoke to the producer about it, and she said at the start, because you can't apply for Great British Man, you have to be asked.
Yeah.
And every year, I always get the phone call around June, because you start filming, depending on the year. Last year was October. So it's very, very quick. So they phone you in about June time, and every year they've been like, okay, are we doing this again? And I'm like, come on. Yeah, and I'm like, oh God, and they're like, come on, like you're gonna. Right. And I obviously always say yes. Then you don't know who you're going on with, obviously. So you have a certain amount of weeks to get ready. Then you get your menu brief. So they'll obviously say, okay, like last year, obviously the brief was, what was the brief again? Oh, Paddington Bear, 65 years Paddington Bear. So they will send you a brief and then a breakdown of what you can sort of go close to or stay away from. Yep. And then you start to film in October. So it's all a very, very quick turnaround. It's all finished by February then. So, you know, they don't hang about.
Really, it's be really intense then.
It is, yeah, when you're over there, yeah.
And the other thing that amazed me is like all the props. I mean, some of them were amazing.
Oh my God, incredible.
And do you work those out, and then are you given a budget?
No, you pay for them yourself.
You have to pay for them yourself?
Yeah.
Wow.
Everything comes out of your own pocket for Great British Menu, apart from the ingredients and stuff. When you're over there, and obviously travelling over in hotels and stuff, that's all them. But it is up to you what you bring and what you do.
A lot of the props are very bespoke. Like,
oh my God! Like last year, what do you call him from the Ritz? He spent £22,000 on props, because when I was told, I was like, I'm sorry, like that I don't even like have. That's half of what it cost me to open my restaurant. It's absurd. You know,
I've always had this thing, because I adore eating out. I love eating out, because to me my husband, lucky enough, is a very good cook, and I love his cooking. But there's something about eating out. It's an experience. It's more than just having a plate of food. But I've always had this thing. We'll find out, and you can have a lovely meal, which is just set on a very ordinary plate, and you go, like, that was delicious, but to me, it's like food is almost like art, and it needs to be framed well.
Absolutely.
And if you frame a dish, even if you're not hungry, it could make you feel, oh my God, I want to eat this. And I've been to some restaurants, and their tableware is like phenomenal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm sure I didn't even say it. That was like what do you call that? Presenter couldn't say phenomenal. So, no, and you just go, oh my God, that looks amazing.
Oh, yeah.
So the props, and then that brings back then the peculiar tea, where you would be very prop orientated, depending on what the story is or what the theme is.
Yeah. We try and sell it as an experience. So that's what I'm going for with the peculiar tea. That was obviously well before Great British Menu. So luckily, Great British Menu just happens to run the same way.
Right, yeah.
But I've always had a very overactive imagination. I've always been very childlike. Huge fan of Disney, Harry Potter, that sort of stuff. Because I just find it's like an escape. And I just think it's nice, you know. And I love fairy tales, and I love Roald Dahl, and I love, you know, all those sorts of things. So whenever I opened the restaurant, that obviously had to be a part of it. And you've been in the restaurant, so you know that it looks like...
And even like I love that. Is it the small grandfather clock that's
that's twisted,
out of a cartoon?
yeah.
I mean,
so it's all...
wee things like that, and then the paintings you have on the
murals,
wall. And even just the outside with the two big mushrooms and then you're over your door. But there's another thing, considering you're in a student area, because whenever you put them out the first time, I went, they'll not be there tomorrow. And they've never been touched.
Never been touched. It's a really lovely area.
But to be in a student area.
Yeah.
Because you would think, right, that's far better than a traffic cone. I want that.
Yeah,
I want
of course.
that in my bedroom. And they've never been.
No, they've never been touched. No, we'd be very lucky that way. But yeah, the restaurants, it's quirky, and that's a huge part of it, is sort of selling it as a theme. So obviously we've done a Best of Roald Dahl theme. We're currently doing a Grease theme. I was in Grease Lightning, not the country. But we always do those sorts of themes, and then part of that has to be the food and how it's presented. So, I mean, at the minute, obviously Danny Zuko, when he's in the cafe, orders like the double polar burger. So we have mini burgers and corns and all that sort of stuff on, and then it's served on a Rydell High sort of, you know, thing that they would carry around the schools, and you know, so that's all. The idea is that you're completely immersed in the experience, but the purpose of that is so that you're not thinking about outside. That's the idea. You're supposed to come into Peculiar Tea and lose all of the stress, all of that adulthood nonsense that fills so much of our day. The purpose was to create something where people could escape from that, and I think so far we've done pretty well. Like Harry Potter, when we done that, was just madness.
It was friends like, they're big mad Harry Potter fans, and they went twice.
Oh my God!
Because the menu, it isn't just a menu; it's a story.
Yeah.
And you go along with the story, so there's a beginning, middle, and end. And
we filled 10 weeks of Harry Potter in 3 days, bookings. It was just now obviously Harry Potter's very popular, so it flew out. But I mean, we also spend 2 days redecorating the restaurant for every theme. You know, we change the menus, the staff uniforms change for every theme. You know, so we really go all out when it comes to just.
It's amazing.
Yeah, have you been?
Never.
Discussing.
That's it. I'm shutting this podcast down right now.
Enjoyed it. See you later.
You're selling it well, then.
Yeah, no, it is. It's something I just wanted to create something that was a wee bit of me, that people could come in. Like we have like ladies that are coming in dressed up as pink ladies, and the men are dressed as T-birds. You know what I mean? When we do, you know, we done a Tim Burton theme. Like people were coming in dressed as in Halloween costumes, and you know, it's just, and they love it. You know, they're having. Don't get me wrong, they're having a 7-course fine dining tasting menu and pairing wines, but they're dressed up. And it's, you know, it's just, it's brilliant. It is.
So it just adds to the whole experience.
Absolutely.
As well as the
just gives you a wee
food.
chance to go back in your childhood for a wee bit and sort of let out the inner child, you know.
And the other thing that you said that I loved was that working in a kitchen, should be like a joyful experience.
Yeah.
Where there's no anger, there's no shouting, and which I thought was brilliant because, like, although I'm old school and go back more years than I care to remember, but when I worked in the kitchen, all you heard, you used to have to go in the kitchen and go, lads, come on, keep that down.
Yeah, of course.
You would have heard, and in some places it still is.
Yeah.
And then I was thinking, like, in the likes of TV, where you've got like Gordon Ramsay, who gives that. And I was thinking, Gordon Ramsay's a bit to blame why we can't get chefs.
Yeah.
Because anybody watching it would go, I don't want to work in that environment. And that's not the way the environment is today anyway.
No, it's not. It has changed. And like, I'm very lucky that I actually have a full female kitchen, which is quite rare. So there's 8 female chefs. Not by choice. I brought the girls with me. And every time we've advertised, it has always been females who have applied, probably because they know it's a full female kitchen.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're, you know, we're a family. You know, we, in the sense that some of us actually are, and we also have a lot of family members that work on the floor that are related. So, you know, but I just think it makes better hospitality. There isn't all the shouting and the screaming and the blaming and it doesn't add
reflects,
anything.
yeah, and
it just
reflects
doesn't.
it.
Yeah, it's
And then
completely
It
pointless.
means your customers that you have sitting in the restaurant start to feel uncomfortable.
Yeah. We have an open pass as well, so
Yeah.
obviously we wouldn't be able. But even if we had a closed pass, it's no different. You know, this.
I don't
say
understand what that means. What's an open pass?
open
closed
pass. So basically, you can see indoor kitchen.
Okay, cool.
So
Yeah.
you can see us cooking and plating and
the
stuff.
plates
So
going out.
Yeah.
the plates going out, so they can hear us. The guests can hear us as much as we can hear the guests. But I still just don't think it adds anything. You know,
Yeah.
all you're doing. You know, the way I see it now. I try very hard to look after my staff. We don't have basically a zero turnaround since we've opened. Because I want to keep them, because it's to my benefit that they stay.
Oh, yeah.
And like my chefs do a 3.5 day week. They get paid very well for it. They get treated with respect, and you know, it's just that's the way it has to be, because the way that it wasn't working.
Yeah.
We couldn't get people into the industry because they were underpaid. They were working 80-hour weeks. Like I remember working in the inn, only the old inn in Crawfordsburn, maybe 6-7 years ago, and I was getting 23 grand a year and working an 80-hour week. You know that, and that was
And you're
standard.
just exhausted, really. I mean,
Yeah,
you're-
exactly. But that was it, and you never complained. You never, because nobody would listen to you. But you just had to get on with it. Whereas now, you know, we get like even Christmas. I guess just a prime example. This year for Christmas, we're closing Christmas week and the first week in January.
Right.
So all of our hospitality staff get 2 weeks of Christmas with their family. And everybody that's working, like I have people there from the merchant, that have worked all over Belfast and surrounding areas that have never had that. And I'm now in a position where I could say, enjoy Christmas with your family.
Totally.
You know,
Really-
and that's...
Really
I mean,
interesting.
Ryan was the same, Ryan Jenkins from Rome when he was in, and it was that work-life balance, and he was at that everybody's guaranteed a 3-day period off.
Yeah.
So if they want to go on a long weekend, they can go.
Absolutely. It's the only way
And it
to
means
go.
everybody's coming back happy, and
They're raring to go.
buzzing to get going
That's
again.
exactly
and
it.
then that reflects on the restaurant floor,
Yeah.
and that keeps your customers coming back.
Yeah,
And as you
absolutely.
say, if you keep the staff, and the customers come back and they recognise the faces,
Mm-hmm.
and then they know what sort of foods they like, what they can recommend. It just works
It does.
on
and-
every level.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yes.
convinced that's why we do well, because our customer service is incredible. And like I know everybody's going to say that about their own restaurant, but we have just an outstanding team.
Yeah,
Of all the
brilliant.
places I've ever worked, I've never had a team like it. But they're so passionate about what they do. Like, and maybe it is because it's so quirky that they enjoy it so much, because we
Yeah.
change the menu quite frequently. We change it every 6 to 8 weeks. So they're never doing anything for too long. They get a say in what their uniform's going to be. You know, it's just they get any time off that they need. You know, exam periods. Take how many weeks do you need? Done. You know, because that's
So
how
they're
it
holding you to
has to
feel
work.
part, yeah.
And it means that out the front, our front of house team are all now best friends, and they
Yeah.
spend their weekends outside of work together. And you know, it just creates such a nice atmosphere, which then reflects on to the guest.
Yeah,
Totally,
it's really interesting. We had a conversation yesterday with somebody, and they were talking about business, and it was a very hard conversation for me to hear because I resonated with it. And they said that whether you like it or not, eventually your business becomes a mirror that reflects your own values, what you believe, and what you actually do. It reflects your own actions back to you.
Absolutely.
And so if there's problems in your business, if things are going out wrong, it tells you something about yourself that you need
Absolutely.
to change.
Which makes complete sense.
If there's things coming back to you in that mirror that are good, and it's like, okay, great, this is good positive feedback for me. If there's problems with your team, then you need to always look back as a leader. And I think listening to you, what I love is your business it reflects a lot of the values that you have, and your values for respecting people, your values for family, your values for providing an escape for people, your values for playfulness and creativity, your values of that childlikeness is really
Yeah.
fun. But also, listen to what you were saying, Jerry, in a strange way, it almost is like your customers then start to reflect those things as well, because you
Yeah.
start to attract certain types of
Absolutely.
people and the regulars
Totally.
that you're talking about. And I just think that's That's just a fabulous way to do business.
Yeah, it is. It's great, and we've a huge customer base now that we're usually 3 to 4 months booked in advance. When people are in for the menu, while they're there, they book for the next menu because they don't want to miss it because it goes so quick, which is just great. And the guests, like, we have guests that come in now and hug our staff because they know them so well, and like it's just like it is that. But to me, that's the way it has to be.
Yeah.
I would never want to.
That's lovely, actually. And I'm just thinking there's a place in Dublin, which is our absolute happy place, and it's the sidecar in the Westbury. And we've got to know all the staff, and when we walk in, they will come round and give us a hug.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's just lovely.
We have like particular certain beer mats and stuff we put out for staff that we got personalised because we know they're coming.
Yeah.
That's, to me, that the way I see it is it's very, very black and white. It's very simple. Those people are spending a serious amount of money to come in and pay my wages, pay my staff's wages, keep my vision, my business, my love, continue because they're choosing us. And that's the way I always describe it to my staff. Every week they're getting £500 into their bank. Yeah. Where do you think that money's coming from? It's from those people that are paying you that money. Yeah. So we have an obligation to make sure that they get the best experience they can.
And this is the thing, like, I don't actually mind naming names. I used to work for Frankie's and Benny's when I was my first job, worked as a busboy. And I don't know if it's a corporate chain thing or if it's different whenever you're working for like a smaller business or a family-owned business. But like the attitude amongst staff is like you hate the customer. They're a nuisance. Or like even a lot of freelance like digital businesses, they talk about clients as if it's a bad word. Yeah. And I'm just kind of sitting there, I'm like,
but without them, you don't have the business.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Exactly,
it's like, this is what this thing is all about.
But I think you can tell that when you go to a restaurant, though. You can tell straight away. Yeah. Whenever I always think you can tell by a person's eyes. So even like when somebody comes to serve your table, some of the guys that we have in work, honestly, I could be so proud of watching them serve people because I'm like, you truly love what you're doing here. Yeah. Like, you couldn't do any more for these people. And they're like, don't get me wrong, our staff are paid well, but it's probably not much higher than anybody else getting in Belfast. They just do it because they love it and because they get to express themselves. They get well looked after. We do family meal every day. We get, it's just, it has just worked out so well. But again, that comes down to reflecting a lot on the way I've been treated through hospitality and making sure that never happens again, because it's just not the way that hospitality is to move forward. If we, as an industry, are struggling so badly to get people to enter the industry, then the problem is with the industry.
Oh, totally.
And that's the only way, and the only way I feel like I am in that generation of Ryan Jenkins and people like that. We are a new generation of chefs that are coming through that have the opportunity to change that. And I would say I don't know anybody that is in that generation of me and Ryan who aren't doing it, which is lovely to see.
That's actually very true. And at the end of it, what's happening is it's a better experience for the customer.
Absolutely.
You're getting better food, better experiences, and want to go back, which that's lovely. Great. I mean, I remember many, many, many years ago, there was a certain restaurant not too far outside Belfast, and you would have been sitting and you would have heard pots getting thrown and then the next thing you would have seen somebody run out of the kitchen and the chef run out with a knife. You're going, thank God, what's going on there?
You don't even have to forget dinner and a show. It's just dinner and the show.
But it actually turned out that that's what it was.
Yeah.
It happened once through a circumstance and then people were talking about it that much. Now, there was no social media then. I didn't think there was any mobile phones then. But the word got about and then people got it going. So they ended up doing it.
Oh, it was a bit?
So it was just a wee bit. And people would go.
So
if he gets a wee drink and then he'll start to throw. And they would just bang. But the first time it happened as a...
as a proper...
That's like guerrilla marketing, like way back in the day, isn't it?
They started doing it every now and again. And people were queuing up to go in and
Oh, that is so funny.
And UFC, the kitchen version.
You should do like a Knives Out theme where it's like...
There used to be a really, really famous restaurant in London, and it was owned by two movie stars and an Irish guy who was a restaurateur. I think it was Langham's or something, maybe really, really famous back. This would have been back in the 60s. And it was owned, say, 2 film stars in this restaurant there. And the Irish guy would have sat at the end of the bar and just got pissed and abused people.
Crazy.
And people used to go just to hear him abuse. And he would just sit at the bar and get blocked.
Yeah.
And he would come out with stories and just abuse him.
Yeah.
Crazy.
And so just thankfully we've all moved on since then.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a nice change, and it's been I feel like it's been a very quick change, even from I started in kitchens. Not to name anybody, but I worked for a head chef once that wouldn't let me cook because I was a female, and that's in the last 8 years. So that just goes,
that is insane.
And it was just it's just not happening. The men are on the line, and I was the only girl until I opened my restaurant. I had never worked with another female. So apart from the team that I brought with me from my last job, but that was it. I had never, it wasn't a thing, and I think it's nice now that females are getting obviously more involved in it. But even one of the chefs I have in with me now, she's currently studying the culinary arts degree, and one of the lecturers phoned me to give her a job because he wanted her to see real hospitality and not being thrown into somewhere where she's not treated right. That. Because she's so good, she has the passion, she has the burned, she has that burning desire to learn. But sometimes people get so put off it by the way they're treated throughout it that they leave it before they should because they're better than that.
So if you were to take, if you were to take someone from the scene locally here out for a meal, or like someone you'd like to learn from, is there anyone you'd like to swap notes with?
Probably the big hitters. Like, I think that's what everybody wants. The likes of Stevie Toman, Mox, or Alex Green. Obviously has done Great British Menu a couple of times, but we have never crossed paths doing it. But to be honest, it probably somebody like Kubo, where it's like something I don't know about. I don't know a lot about Filipino food. I think that is why Belfast is getting so great, because it's getting so diverse. And we have even when, Andy Oliver, who presents Great British Menu, was over recently, we went for dinner, and she came over to the restaurant, and, I was explaining some of the things we have here in a new Caribbean place just opening in the road, and she was like, I live in London and we don't have this. Yeah. We don't have the diversity like you have here. You're just seeing all these wee places that are bringing their style of cooking to Belfast, which just improves Belfast. Yeah, you literally can't. So probably somebody like that who's going to teach me something that I couldn't get from a normal book. Somebody that is going to show me how to make. I done a bit of work with Ardetska, so it's called the Silk Road Supper Club. They've actually just brought out a cookbook.
Yes, seen it, yeah.
So we done a pop up with them 2 or 3 weeks ago. Where basically it's refugees and asylum seekers, females, and they came to the restaurant and cooked a couple of their meals, and we sold it out for dinner or whatever else. But I actually started with them a couple of years ago, and the idea was that these women were seeking asylum, and they wanted to do a pop-up of their food, but they had no idea, obviously, about our hygiene policies and things like that from here. So when they reached out to me, I was like, yeah, 100%, I'd love to do this. So I went in to work with these women to sort of show, this is like a chef's knife, and this is the coloured board you'd use for cutting veg. And I was schooled. They made an idiot out of me, because I was like, look how I cut this lovely parsley nice and fine. And this one of these ladies just got this bit of parsley, and she was just hacking away at it with it in her hand. But it was the finest parsley I've ever seen. But it's just how they do it.
They do it.
So I was there to teach them. But the reality was, I learned so much of their cooking. And, this women from Syria and, from all around the world that basically have nothing. And the only thing that brings them together is food. And it's just incredible. But that's what I think Belfast is so unique for. Yeah. We have so many beautiful wee spots that are just doing food that they're passionate about.
Yeah.
Class.
No, brilliant. No, what I was going to ask you, when you were saying about the chef who, because you were a woman, wouldn't let you cook, and then you actually went through some stick because all your kitchen, which I've seen some of it on social media, and some of it was just unreal.
Oh my God! You've no idea.
It was unreal.
I've had some seriously disgusting stuff said to me and posted to me, and especially after Great British Menu, the second year I was on, I actually had to remove my social media because it was so bad. But yeah, listen, I think that comes part and parcel with doing it. You know, if you're going to put yourself out there, you have to accept that you're going to get some stuff back. But that being said, some of the ways I was treated in kitchens, if it was done now, even though it was only 6 or 7 years ago, if it was done now, the person would, like, it would be a serious offence. Like, and that's, I suppose for me then, it was sort of, I wanted to be one of the lads. So even if they, you know, slap me in the ass or would do it, I was just like, haha, good one, you know, because
that was the culture then.
Because that's how it went. I was the only female, so I was the one that was touched, and you know, and that, you know, to me then it was kind of, I would never have dreamt of complaining about it, because then I wouldn't have been part of the group, and that was the only option. When you're the only female, you have to blend in, and that was just the way it was, which is a shame. But at that time, I was kind of like, well, I have to just get on with this. And I suppose massive part of me was like, when I worked, because it was harder, whenever I worked, I was always the first in, always the last to leave. I give it 110 when they didn't, because I needed to prove myself, you know. And I actually remember whenever I got promoted in the inn, so I was promoted to sous chef, and like some of the men were like, I'm not working here anymore. Like, I'm not working for a female, and this is just ridiculous. And that you're talking for 4 or 5, like, people, it is tough.
It's really that long ago.
It really isn't that long ago. And I still think there is a long way to go. I think that if you look even at, you know, if you look at the Michelin Guide, how many female chefs are in it? Very few. You know, it's very hard for women to get to the top. And that is just, and that is the reality. And I know that people probably argue with me about it, but I've lived it, and I know that it's not as simple, but you just have to progress. And then when you get to the top, then you're sort of like, yeah, well, was it worth it? Yeah, 100%.
Phenomenal.
And I learnt a lot of who I am, a lot of how to treat people, how not to treat people as part of that, you know. So it is what it is. But I mean, 11 months into opening the restaurant, we were in the Michelin Guide, so
brilliant.
Class.
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. So
Jerry, any closing?
Well, I mean, one of the things, and this is just like, whenever you were in the Fitzwilliam, you became head pastry chef.
Yeah.
And pastry it's almost a science rather than baking. Everything has to be the exact measurements, and as any of that, obviously some of that's carried through to peculiar tea. Because I mean, when we were there, I have to say the sweets were, you know, what do they call Instagramic, or, you know, Instagrammable. Everybody was taking photos. The sweets.
I like Instagramic. I'm going to start using that.
Instagramic.
Is that it? Did you get that from TikTok? That's pretty hip and new. That's cool. Leading from the front, Jerry. I love it.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely.
It all started here.
Yeah. No, it's definitely, I think, again, females are always pushed into pastry. That's just the way it goes. So I was a pastry chef for a long time. I think because, I don't know, men prep meat. You know, men cook on the grills. You know, I think it was just always sort of, that's, as soon as I started in the kitchen, it was kind of like, okay, well, you're in pastry. And listen, I think that is a great thing. I encourage anybody who is starting as a chef or maybe doesn't know a lot about pastry to do it, because I think the values you learn doing pastry and the importance of following ingredients and recipes and stuff, whereas it's very different when you're cooking normally. You know, you're making a sauce, you put a splash of sherry vinegar in, you put a splash of this in, whereas when you do that in pastry, even when you do it right, it doesn't work sometimes. But I think it teaches... I
always found that fascinating, that it's such a science.
Oh, to the gram, like micro scales is a lot of what we... And, you know, I just think that's brilliant. I think pastry I love pastry, because I think you just create something that you're like, wow, that's cool. You know,
we've got to love watching, you know, the other menu show where it is all pastry.
Oh yeah.
Is it the Bake Off?
Great British Bake Off.
Yeah. And like when they're doing the glass work and the sugar work, and
it's insane.
And it's all so refined, and you've got guys from the Savoy and the Ritz, and it's just powerful to watch.
Yeah,
it's
of course.
Amazing.
It's class.
And if you were, or am I jumping the gun here with this one? Are you going to do the final question?
Oh,
what
Jerry,
I was going to ask
do you know what? It would be my absolute pleasure to hear come out of your mouth.
No, I was just going to ask, because I found when I left the bar game, if I was going somewhere, I almost found it difficult to get into some bars because you spot everything. And I would end up clearing glasses off tables. And, and you do it. So is there anywhere that you can enjoy going for a meal and totally relax?
Honestly, everywhere. I'm just not like that. I have a fine dining restaurant, but I'm not a fine dining gal. Like it's not my kind of food. I would much prefer to go to Pie Guy and get a bit of pizza and then go to, I love food trucks. I love all that sort of, I love trade market. I love what they're about. Yeah. All of that sort of, I just love people that are passionate about what they do. And I don't care if that's a bowl of ramen or a taco, you know what I mean? Yeah. To me, that's much better food than what I'm doing in a sense because I'm doing classic gastronomy. Yeah. These people are doing what's in their blood, so...
And it's good, heartwarming.
Absolutely.
I totally agree. I mean, one of my favourite places would be like Madame Fu, which is the best ramen I've ever tasted.
Yeah, 100%, yeah.
There's the wee Greek shop, I can never Taiyaki or something.
Yeah.
The Greek restaurant.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Unbelievable.
The Ziggy,
unbelievable. And as you were saying, like all these people coming in Lhasa, down in Common Market,
the
Filipino food.
It's just class. We have such an array of hospitality here.
Yeah. Final question. I thought this was the one you were going to do, so I'm glad you saved me one. If you could go back in a time machine to, let's say, Gemma, who had just found out she couldn't do nursing. So let's go right to the heart of it there.
Yeah.
And you had a couple of minutes of that younger version of Gemma's time. What sort of things would you say to her?
Probably just to persevere, just to keep going. That it has been a tough road, to be quite honest, between work and, mental health and things like that. It hasn't been easy to get to this stage. But I wouldn't change a single bit of it because I'm convinced that, like I said, I have the platform that I do for a reason, and I think it's because I'm hoping I have created something that's unique in Belfast that is not just food, but it's for people, and that's really important to me. And I think that is something that I would never change. So as much as going through the mental health journey and all that sort of stuff, at that time I would have given anything to not have it. I don't think I would be who I am without it. So I probably would just say, just keep going, keep pushing, keep good. Every time you're told no because you're a female, or every time you're not invited to do things, don't get disheartened because there is a reason that this is all happening. And I get to run a beautiful restaurant in the city centre of the place I'm born and bred from, with a team of 30 incredible people that I wouldn't change for the world. So, it's great. It's great.
It's amazing. Well,
that's just wonderful to hear. Genuinely is wonderful to hear.
I love to see, and I think Northern Ireland has lots, but needs more of values-based business owners.
Yeah.
Who it's not just about the bottom line, as important as that is. It's obviously it's what business is all about, but actually looking to contribute on a wider societal level. Yeah. And so I appreciate everything you're doing, and I appreciate your time today. Thank you
so much for having me.
Thoroughly enjoyed that.
Yeah.
Really
brilliant.
Genuinely. Thanks, Jerry.
So, one last thing.
The
bag. So, as in tradition of the Job Back sessions, we couldn't have you leave here.
Oh, we're getting pushed.
This is the after pod party.
Here we go. So he brings out the bottle of gin after. Thank you so much. I very much appreciate that.
Class.
And enjoy that with ginger ale and a squeeze of lime. The perfect serve.
Listen, you're the boss. I don't tell you how to cook.
Thank you very much for listening and watching.
Pleasure.
Rosca, thank you so much for producing today. And we'll see you again next time. Cheers.
Cheers.